the CEO and counterterrorism advisor of the Modern Security Consulting Group. We're based in Berlin. I'm not German, like I said, I'm Canadian, but we founded the company 12 years ago, and we're a counterterrorism consultancy company. We don't do personal protection or any hardware stuff, but obviously to do the strategic consulting, we have to work with available intelligence, and all our information is based on a fairly large network of human beings, but also online stuff that provide us with the information. The case I'm presenting today is part of a mandate that we got from a client a couple of years back, a client that was mandated by the Ukrainian government to try to improve their policy with Ukraine, to try to improve relationship with African countries and try to counteract Russian disinformation or Russian influence campaigns on the African continent. And there's a particular breaking point, or change is the Battle of Tinzawatin in July of last year, late July of last year, and that brings about a new constellation when we're talking about future warfare, where parties now, thanks to cyber capacities, the digital world can actually support and create new fronts where previously there was no cooperation. And this is why I think the third front, the African theater of the Ukrainian war, is very important. It's understated, it's overlooked, but I think there's some interesting material in that as well. Oh, but that's gone too.
Use one.
I know my stuff, so. Yeah, essentially, set up a bit of context. In spring of 2022, we're mandated by that organization because obviously there's the vote at the UN in March of 2023, where very few African countries supported Ukraine. They either abstained or voted against. And Ukrainians thought, oh no, we need to change that. We expected actually the global south to support us and try to improve what we're doing. Why isn't that working? And one of the things that came out, and it's in the first slide somewhere, in that first slide, one of the problems was that the tactics that they used, we used to call them internally the We Are the World campaign, based on a hit song of the mid-'80s, which was about famine and crying babies with flies in their faces, anything, the infomercials you see on the Sunday morning. It was just completely out of date, incredibly insulting, but also it doesn't work. And to try to counter that, we had to come up with new strategies and ways. Wow, cool. Yeah. So, yeah, l'Afrique a besoin de nourriture et l'Ukraine est prête à la soutenir en ces temps difficiles. So yeah, Africa needs food and Ukraine is there to support them. They will provide you, will help with the famine, the hunger, and everything else. As I said, that did not sit well. I sat in a meeting early 2023 with African officials and Ukrainian officials as well, and it was an eye-opener for Ukrainians because they all came in with that narrative and said, well, you have grain, all the grain you want. And African officials, one in particular was very smart, and he said, how can you offer something that you do not control? If the Russians don't let your grain, your ship full of grain go out of the sea, you don't have anything. You're dependent on the Turks as well. So you're offering something you're not controlling. What else do you have? Let's talk seriously. And you could see the face like, oh, why isn't that working? We didn't expect that at all. And so that forced a rethink, a new approach, trying to improve the knowledge on the continent, but also to change networks. And one of the approaches that we suggested was, in fact, you won't convince, and this is one of the key points, you won't convince governments that they need to work with you. You need to find other outlets. So the policy approach before November of 23 was, and it's fairly sound, basically, create support for Ukraine in international organizations through African countries, create economic support, reduce Russian influence, hinder Russian supply chains. That's very important. Kristen last year did a good piece on economic chains from the Wagner Group. They play something big in this. And then to contain and reduce Russian influence in Africa as a whole. But the problem was the narrative. So as I said, the donor development part, that no longer works. They kept trying to say, oh, Russia's evil. No, you can't trust the Russians. They're really bad. Well, that didn't work because a lot of African governments have a good, long-standing relationship with Russia. So that narrative did not work. Russia is weak. So especially once the whole story with... Okay. Oh. Yeah, so Russia is weak, especially after Wagner. Everything just, it's falling apart. They're no longer there to support you. They can't supply the military support, the security support that you guys need. So distance yourself from Russia as well. And obviously this strategy was a complete failure. It didn't work, and Ukraine was still isolated and wasn't getting the support they needed. Then came the fall of Kidal, and why is that important? Well, throughout the year, the Malian government works very closely with the Russians, said, well, the Tuareg movements in the north, they're actually terrorists now. They're no longer rebel movements. The Algiers Accord that had been signed, partially signed in 2015, are no longer valid, and therefore the Wagner presence in Mali is now a counterterrorism operation. That counterterrorism operation allows the government to then strike at the Tuareg, who are a rebel movement. They're not terrorists per se, but the world being a gray zone, the world being the gray zone that it is, of course the Tuareg also have that relationship with the JNIM, or GSEM in French, which is the Al-Qaeda link group. And it's that gray zone where the supply chains, the ecosystem just brings all of these actors together. So technically speaking, you could say, well, because of that collaboration, the Tuareg movements were terrorists, but essentially the goal was to create that label and create a sense that, well, Wagner can strike these people legitimately because they're enemies. And that worked. So in November of that year, the Tuareg rebels, withdrew from Kidal, which has very deep cultural relevance for them. The FAMA, the Malian Armed Forces, took over. They had that's not the Malians up there. They had that photo up, good. But then the Russians came in and had that moment. I'll try and make the picture a bit bigger, although you can't really see it. They went all Iwo Jima, Berlin again. They went on top of this. They raised the Wagner flag and did huge propaganda saying, wow, we're great at counterterrorism. We kicked out terrorists. Look at the great work that we're doing. Other African countries, we're actually an example for you guys. This is great. We're working well. Look at what the government is doing. For obvious reasons, that didn't sit well with the Tuareg. But there's not much they could do about it. Consequences from the fall of Kidal. Well, they tried to start saying, well, if we're going to fight the Russians now, then Ukraine's fight becomes our fight. This is what the Tuareg started to say. At the same time, you might be aware that Ukraine started having special forces operations in Sudan and in Libya. And so Mali became a new opportunity for the Ukrainians to start becoming involved, for lack of a better term, in black ops and special forces operations in Mali. They try to reverse that narrative. And then finally, they took the hint of saying, okay, let's not work with the government. Let's try to use opposition forces. Let's try to use movements that are against the government to try to improve our own status, which is we're fighting for something legitimate. We're fighting for values. We're on your side. We're against corruption. The people in Bamako or the people elsewhere, they're doing this and that. Exactly. So this was a new narrative, a new change, and that created the opportunity for Ukraine to start expanding its actions for the Battle of Tinzawatin. Thing is, our intel was clear about this. Ukrainians got barely involved early 2024. There's nothing at the end of 2023. It was early 2024. and then minimal, just a bit of training, but it was more of a, hi, let's get to know each other, let's see what we can do for another, minimum stuff. And then the Battle of Tinzawatin happens, major battle, maybe not a lot of people heard about it, but still big. On the one side, the Tuareg rebels, and that was for us as a company, probably the most relevant aspect was they actually fought that battle alongside Al-Qaeda terrorists, right? That was the key part of it before we found out about the rest, against the Malian forces. And well, it was already Africa Corps by then, but they still went under the name Wagner, and it's the different components of Russian PMC companies there. And it resulted in Wagner's biggest defeat in Africa. It's also the second time they had a major loss after being expelled from Mozambique, from Cabo Delgado in 2019. So that's serious, that again sort of put in question the fighting credibility of the Russians in Africa, because that was one of the things after Cabo Delgado that, well, the Russians withdrew because they couldn't fight so-called jungle warfare. They weren't adapted to this, they didn't have the tactics, they didn't have the techniques. It's also a different environment. You can have a there's something as desert warfare, there's also jungle warfare, and you need a certain experience for that as well. Well, once the rebels and terrorists won, suddenly the Ukrainians went, hey, we were there. Hi, we're hinting at this. Yeah, we can't tell you exactly how we were involved, but we helped them fight. We're like, no, man, you guys weren't part of this at all. But the fact that there was communication, there was a certain degree of exchanges, they jumped on it. The comms went right away. Okay, information warfare, we're using this. We're actually helping rebels against fighting Russians. Obviously, this was reposted on numerous channels. The picture on the left was actually taken weeks before. That wasn't after the battle. That wasn't a celebratory picture. That was actually weeks before. But useful. The Russians, on the other hand, had a big problem in their hands. The original on the left, French translation on the right, so that's the internal channels regarding Wagner, Russian PMCs, where they sort of said, well, actually, we didn't have these so many losses. To clarify, this is the operation we had. This is how it worked. It's not as bad as portrayed, but it's working out. Then you had Russian RT, Russia Today, saying, oh, see, there were actually Ukrainian mercenaries in Mali. They were actually fighting for them. They're actually, Ukraine is supporting terrorists. Wasn't the case, but the narrative is very important in this case to try to push it. And on the right, then you would have another Wagner channel saying, well, this is actually what we were doing. We had this amount of drones, we had this amount of helicopters, types of vehicles, personnel. This is how they're working. This is the type of challenges that we're facing. So very, very technical, very military-like, saying, well, it's not as bad as being portrayed, but it's working. So different channels, both publicly and internally, to try to mitigate what had happened at Tinzawatin. A month later, so there's this new organizations, the Alliance of Sahelian States, Alliance des États du Sahel, which involves all three countries who had a putsch or a coup in the last 5 years. That's Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. All of them supported by Russia, and they sent a letter to the Security Council, to the UN, and said, hey, Ukrainians are supporting terrorists. We're denouncing this. This is not right. We need to do something against this. So they're actually using formal channels to try to denounce what essentially wasn't a real support, but it's still the narratives all the time. It's creating that story. That's why the comms and that information warfare aspect becomes really important. But then, once the genie is out of the bottle, why not use it? And this is what the Tuareg in September started doing really well. The one on the left is their main PR person, public relations person. He's doing TV interviews and saying, hey, since last year, so late 2023, we're working really closely with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, great ties. They're teaching us how to pilot drones, how to fight. It's a fantastic relationship. On the right, a statement from another public relations speaker saying, we're actually working with the Ukrainians since early 2024. And it's really nice. We're all our brothers and sisters. They're all good. We love working with them. And they're helping us fight the Russian invaders, the Russian criminals, just like we're helping them win the war. So suddenly you have this situation where out of nothing, you're creating an alliance. You're seeing we have suddenly a strong cooperation, a strong collaboration, at least online, at least for information warfare. Other channels, the Tuareg started using bots as well. Some of these accounts are real, but some are bots. Same thing, so Farhad al-Mahmoud, I'll have a story about him in a minute. But yeah, so they're all in on the propaganda now. The channels are about, suddenly they're using stuff that the Ukrainians are posting on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Twitter, and other TikTok, and they're reposting that everywhere, saying Slava Ukraina, everything else, we're standing by their side, we're there with them, and we're winning that war. Again, that same narrative. But that also creates problems. So I mentioned Farhad al-Mahmoud. Well, in December 1st of last year, drone strike. The Tuareg were meeting, the movements were actually having a big meeting to rebrand, rename, which was also a consequence of the Battle of Tinzawaten. And the Russians and the Malians used that opportunity to try to decapitate the movement, used a drone strike, and killed 7 of them, including very influential figures. So you would figure at that point, okay, well, probably the Tuareg they'll stop at this point. This is escalation in terms of operations, in terms of intimidation. Well, that would be underestimating them, which is they kept on going. And this, the one on the left, there's actually March 1st of this year. So the channels are still very active. So, and the one on the right was actually posted late February of this year. And it's Ukrainians now posting drone images from their own drone operations saying, okay, this is how we're conducting our drone operations. We're mapping the different areas, the bases, we're guiding operations, and we can actually also conduct military operations using drones. But now they're posting the footage online. It's like, let's look how we're effective. They developed a new logo for that. And you can see that's something that's also important, using Ukrainian colors, right? The attachment, the communication in terms of the relationship now is really important. In short, because I have less than a minute, so the reactions to Tinzawaten, social media can create, catalyze, and intensify cooperation where it was previously non-existent. Suddenly, you have a new phase in warfare, which is I can use something that costs nothing and suddenly create an alliance out of this, create a narrative that works really well at no cost. The other one is to appropriate a local conflict. And I know during the Cold War and other places, like, oh yeah, we're using this. Yes, but you had to send more personnel in there to try to develop that relationship, to try to develop that communications, the skills. The Ukrainians barely sent anyone. There were some exchanges, but the real cooperation wasn't there anymore. It was all done online. It was out of something artificial, it became real. That's, I think, is the biggest thing. But locally, that's probably something that's unique to the Tuareg because they're so well organized as a movement, is essentially they're using the war in Ukraine to leverage their own capacity within Mali and change their conflict dynamic. They're suddenly getting more support, they're getting more money, they have more credibility, and that changes essentially the whole game. So from nothing, that battle put the African front really on the map, involved states, involved informal actors in a way that was essentially artificial and became very real, and I think we're dealing with a new phenomenon in that case. Thank you very much for your attention. Well, if we compare it to what the Ukrainians were doing, how they involved themselves in Sudan, for example, they went in very classical ways. So special forces, military operations, but they didn't use the communication skills. And also the Sudanese rebels that they were supporting didn't react, didn't reciprocate in such a way. I think that, so there's a basis for it, but where it becomes very unique is how the Tuareg used that as well and expanded on it. But where it becomes interesting, or probably the big question in this is, are there other rebel groups or other militias elsewhere that are so well organized that they can actually develop use that as an example, and also ensure that they have the communications infrastructure to develop something like this. So I think for now, I'd say its most recent development is unique, but it has a basis in what's been done previously, and I think, to my knowledge, it's still, right now, it's the only case that we know of that's developed like this.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Yes, Yuri Raitala from Finnish National Defense University. Thank you very much. I think you were just, in the end, you were just stating very briefly the real-life consequences, because I think it's often is missing when we talk about narratives and information warfare and information operations is, so what? If you get the narrative out, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what are the kind of policy outcomes from that? How can you benefit from that?
Yeah.
So did Ukraine, Russia, you mentioned a little bit about the Tuaregs. Can you kind of say something about how the policies and their outcomes for those actors changed in the real life?
Yeah, well, for the Tuareg, it's suddenly they became united more than before. So you had four movements that were known as the MSA in general. They all united under one banner now, the Liberation Front of Azawad. So that's a direct consequence. Their training improved, the resonance of their operations improved. So that's directly for the Tuareg. Financially, they also got more support. Militarily, in terms of weapons, suddenly they have their operational reputation has changed. So that's one key aspect. For the Russians, it's suddenly having lost and not being, they lost the edge in terms of narrative, but also operationally, people know that they can breathe now. In that sense where, because one of the things that is greatly misunderstood in terms of Wagner and Russian PMCs, they're always on second wave. It's really important. They are never the first, they never instigate. It's local military, and the Russians then come in as a second wave. And in that sense, even that second wave now doesn't work well. So that's also an operational change in terms of the Russian. They also had to intensify, they had to try to plug the gaps, plug the leaks in terms of disinformation because they were losing credibility. So that's the key thing. For Ukraine is suddenly, they know that approach can work. Having a third front where there's an increasing support directly within the population, that Russia is no longer almost having, say, a monopoly over the rhetoric, over the support, that changed a lot. The question that I think it's probably even more relevant in this case, can they keep it up, right? So we know there are very clear short-term consequences, militarily, politically, but sustaining that becomes very difficult. So right now we see the potential for sustainability, but that can change really quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. We stop now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we ask Oksana to join us for the...
Je ne sais pas si vous avez ma présentation. Vous avez ma présentation? Pardon? On va attendre Christine peut-être. Christine, est-ce que tu veux bien ma présentation? Oui. D'accord, ok. Ça fonctionne comment? D'accord, ok. Ça fonctionne comment?
Dear all, we are glad to have Oksana with us, but we've got like a specific thing. Oksana is speaking Ukrainian and French and not English, so sorry for you, but I have to make the translation, so you have to deal with my French accent. Yeah, but she's very kind with me because my Ukrainian is definitely very bad, so she will do it in French. So for the French speaker, it will be quite comfortable, and I will try to assure an English translation for you. So.
Peut-être pour ne pas perdre le temps en attendant la présentation, parce que... Ah, voilà, il est là. Donc, on va parler de choses très, très sérieuses, parce que, si vous voulez, cette illusion d'invisibilité de la Russie, c'est le problème de cette guerre.
She wants to present you a paper dealing with the perception of invincibility of Russia, which is quite an illusion and which is the core issue of this conflict.
Et cette petite approche que je vais faire, c'est un résultat du travail collectif qui était fait par les analystes, les historiens et les philosophes ukrainiens, parce qu'on a essayé de résumer en 15 minutes l'histoire qui dure 1000 ans.
This is a result of collegial work with psychologists, with philosophers from Ukraine, who try to make a summary of an history long from decades and thousands of years.
Comment je passe à la truc suivante? Comment
Ah ben voilà.
Comment?
Tu fais un signe et monsieur.
Ah, je fais un signe, voilà. Donc, ça c'est le premier slide. Donc, pourquoi Poutine semble-t-il invulnérable?
Why did Putin seem invulnerable?
L'histoire est assez longue. Bon, j'ai essayé de résumer. En fait, c'est une mythe.
For us, trying to summarize the story, it's just a myth.
Le mythe de l'Empire russe.
The myth of Russian Empire.
L'Empire russe était créé, attention, par les Ukrainiens.
Russian Empire has been created, special warning by Ukrainians.
À l'époque de Pierre Ier. C'était 1712.
During the 18th century.
C'était le résultat de la fin de la guerre du Nord.
It was the result of the end of the North War.
Et cette partie de la terre s'appelait, avant 1712, Moscovia. Ce qu'on appelle aujourd'hui la Russie, l'Empire russe, ça s'appelait, avant Pierre Ier, ça s'appelait Moscovia.
Okay. Before that time, all this area was named Moscovia.
Moscovia, c'était la colonie et la province du grand État médiéval qu'on connaît comme la Russe de Kiev.
It was a space known in the medieval time like the Rus of Kiev.
C'était les terres qui étaient peuplées par les peuples non slaves.
It was occupied by people, non-Slavic people.
C'était les peuples de la groupe finno-hongrois,
Finnish-Hungarian people.
une gentille people, un peuple assez gentil, mais très, très dépendante des Slaves de la Russe de Kiev en termes d'économie.
That were having a strong link and dependency to the Slavic people in terms of economy.
Et ils n'étaient pas réunis dans les États, donc c'était les colonies, les principautés de la Russe de Kiev qui géraient ces territoires-là.
And they were not gathered as expected. Consequently, the administration was managed by the Rus of Kiev.
Et pendant l'envahissement des Mongols,
And during the Mongol invasion,
comme c'était désastre pour toute cette partie de l'Europe,
and it was a disaster for Europe,
la résistance aux Mongols elle était donnée seulement sur les territoires métropoles, ça veut dire Kiev, Tchernihiv,
the main parts of the resistance was territories in Kiev and Chernihiv that you know,
et l'Ukraine occidentale,
and Western Ukraine.
tandis que ces provinces et colonies de la grande empire russe de Kiev, il était envahi par les Mongols.
While this empire of the Rus of Kiev was devastated and invaded by the Mongol Empire.
Donc, on a une partie, pourquoi l'Ukraine s'appelle Ukraine, ça veut dire dans inland, la pays à l'intérieur, la métropole.
The meaning of Ukraine mean inner land, the country inside the land.
Il a gardé cette métropole, il a gardé ses traditions démocratiques, parce que je rappelle que Kiev était toujours la république féodale démocratique.
These parts keep its democratic habits and process because I want to remind you that it was already a democratic.
Et pour ne pas trop plonger dans l'histoire, pour résister aux Mongols qui étaient juste aux frontières, ces territoires étaient attachés à la principauté de Lituanie et Pologne plus tard.
And short long story that were correlated and linked with Lithuania and Poland.
Donc c'était les pays européens, donc c'était les territoires européens avec la tradition du gouvernement européen.
Consequently, they were a European country dealing with European and democratic tradition.
Tandis que le reste qui était envahi par les Mongols, c'est y compris la Moscovia,
While the other parts, including Moscovia,
il était influencé par le régime de Mongols, ça veut dire le despotisme asiatique.
was influenced by Mongol realm, which were much more despotic.
Donc, on a un partage, la ligne de partage passe par là. Vous avez d'un côté l'Ukraine qui a gardé ses traditions médiévales qui ont les sources encore beaucoup plus profondes, mais démocratiques européennes. Et de l'autre côté, vous avez une entité étatique qui est sous l'influence, parce que pendant 300 ans, les Mongols étaient sur cette terre, donc ils ont même dans leur langage, dans leur lexique politique, les Russes, langue russe, il a gardé toute cette tradition de despotisme asiatique amenée par les Mongols. Voilà, donc on s'arrête là pour vous donner un aspect historique. C'est pour comprendre que quand à l'époque, Pierre Ier a envahi les territoires ukrainiens, les Ukrainiens, en pensant que si on a l'affaire avec les gens qui étaient sous le despotisme, qu'on va les civiliser par notre culture démocratique, comme nous sommes plus anciens, les traditions sont beaucoup plus fortes, on a pensé, c'était pour la première fois une tentative apaiser les barbares.
Oui, parce que sinon,
Et on a offert l'idée, parce qu'en Ukraine, à l'époque, déjà étaient les universités, en Russie, il n'y avait pas, on a proposé apaiser.
And I've got to translate.
Oui, pardon, excuse-moi. Oui, excuse-moi.
I think that you want me dead. Okay, in order not to betray what I've been said, but shorten the thing, basically you've got like a line of division in between East and West, one which is influenced and in line and devoted, like linked with European standards, and the other one who is more linked to Asian influence, language and process in terms of governance.
Et comme on a bien compris que nous n'avons pas le choix parce que cette alliance avec la Moscovie a été imposée aux Ukrainiens.
And they had no choice because the alliance with Moscovia was imposed to Ukrainians.
Comme les accords de Minsk d'aujourd'hui, par exemple. Donc, on a essayé d'apaiser. Donc, on a déjà cette expérience, apaiser les Russes, les gens de Moscou. On a proposé, ici, on crée une union. Mais à l'époque, les unions s'appelaient les empires.
So they've got a kind of experiences of dealing with Russian and trying to cool the situation. And at that time, the way chosen was to propose like a kind of alliance in order to cool thing. But at that time, alliance take the appearance of joining an empire.
Pierre Ier voulait faire la capitale à Kiev.
Pierre I want to make Kiev the capital.
Et vous savez bien que Pierre Ier voulait être absolument dans l'Europe. Il était fasciné par l'Europe, il a fait ses voyages quand il était jeune. Donc c'était un jeune tsar russe qui voulait couper avec le passé despotique des Mongols.
And you know that he was really pro-European. He made like lots of travels, and he wants to make his country more European and to cut with the Mongol history.
Donc, mais avec son esprit, il voulait pas avoir une union d'égaux. Il voulait la domination.
But it was not for an equal relationship, but for domination.
Et quand les Ukrainiens ont appris ça, on a commencé à résister.
And that what ends the Ukrainian resistance.
Mais il faut rappeler que toutes les académies, les universités de Saint-Pétersbourg et de Moscou ont été créées par les Ukrainiens.
But I want to remind that St. Petersburg and Moscow University have been created by Ukrainians.
C'était avant que Pierre a commencé à inviter les Allemands et les autres étrangers. C'était les ressortissants de l'Ukraine, des universités ukrainiennes, qui ont créé tout ce qui est la science en Russie. Les meilleurs artistes peintres qui sont dans la galerie Tretiakov, ce sont les Ukrainiens de Kiev.
It was long time before Pierre I invited other countries, European countries, including German. Sorry, Martin. And you can notice that lots of the best painters that are in the Russian museums are Ukrainian.
Donc l'Ukraine a réussi quand même à imposer son mode européen de vie aux Russes, mais malheureusement, il n'a pas pu changer la mentalité d'origine du despotisme asiatique.
So if Ukrainians succeed in imposing a kind of European way of behaving and thinking and culture, they didn't succeed on a political point of view.
Et on touche maintenant la psychologie politique.
Well, not touching.
Le dominé ne supporte pas l'égalité avec ce qu'il domine.
I am not touching with political psychology, and the one who is dominating can bear equality with the one who is dominated.
Je comprends que c'est très compliqué.
I understand it's pretty complex.
J'ai écrit un livre à ce sujet, ce sera plus simple d'expliquer sur les pages des livres, mais c'est essentiel pour comprendre que ce n'est pas le conflit entre la Russie et l'Ukraine, c'est la guerre perpétuelle entre deux systèmes différents.
All that to emphasize that it's not just a fight in between two countries, Ukraine and Russia, but it is a continuum of an opposition in between more European thing represented by Ukrainian and Russia. We can't give up with its.
Dès l'époque de Pierre Ier, la Russie fait semblable que c'est un grand empire. Mais derrière de ça, il n'y a que Moscou et Saint-Pétersbourg.
Peter I wants to explain that he is at the head of a huge empire, but in reality, it's just mainly made of Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Pour Poutine, il y a deux idoles, deux icônes qu'il vénère. C'est Pierre Ier et Staline.
President Putin had a kind of admiration for two main characters, Peter I and Stalin.
Et cette idée de grandeur, ça vient de l'époque de Pierre Ier.
And this idea of grandiosity, thank you, of grandiosity came from Peter I.
Parce que voilà, cette histoire Great Russia Today, c'est la même chose dans la psychologie de Poutine. Donc, vous vous souvenez, 2008, Poutine a dit que la plus grande catastrophe du XXe siècle, c'est l'éclatement de l'Union soviétique.
In 2008, Putin said that the biggest catastrophe of the century was the fall of the USSR.
Et comme l'Union soviétique a renoncé à l'empire russe,
and as the USSR gave up with a Russian empire,
depuis 2008, Poutine essaie de restaurer l'empire soviétique.
Putin is trying to give a rebirth to the Russian empire since this time.
En utilisant tous les outils, tous les mécanismes de son autre idole, Staline.
using all that have been used, created, and promoted by Stalin,
Et quel était le meilleur mécanisme de Staline
and which was the best tool of Stalin,
par rapport du reste du monde?
comparing to the rest of the world.
Parce que reste du monde, c'est l'expression aussi de Staline. Il y avait l'Union soviétique et le reste du monde.
Which is the Stalin expression. You've got Russia and you've got USSR at
Yeah.
that time, and you've got the rest, quote, the rest of the world.
Vu la montée du communisme et des mouvements de gauche partout dans le monde à l'époque de Staline,
Considering the rise of left side and communism during the Stalin era,
Staline il a inventé une notion des idiots utiles.
he worked and create the notion of useful idiots.
Idiot utile, ça veut dire on utilise les gens, par exemple la partie communiste français.
Meaning that you can use people.
Non, il a traité comme ça la partie communiste français.
And he was explaining that what was the head of communism, French party.
En profitant de fascination qui était absolument légitime, il y avait beaucoup de gens de gauche et les socialistes, les communistes, ils ont été fascinés par l'idée de l'Union soviétique sans comprendre qu'est-ce qu'il y a à l'intérieur de cette Union soviétique.
To do that, they used the fascination that these people had for USSR and communism ideal, not knowing what was really behind.
Donc, et Poutine et Staline, il a commencé par Comintern, par le Comité international du communisme, en disant c'est nos idiots utiles.
He started with the Comintern, saying that it was their useful idiots.
Ils vont nous aider d'instaurer notre régime de communisme.
They will help us to sell our own communist regime.
Parce que je voudrais rappeler que l'idée du communisme à l'Europe occidentale et l'idée du communisme à l'Union soviétique, c'est deux communismes différents. Chez nous, c'était totalitarisme. Voilà, donc on nous reste 5 minutes. C'était une grande introduction. La suivante. C'est pour vous dire que toutes les opérations dans les médias et surtout dans la conversation avec les politiques étrangères, on utilise toujours manipulation, en fait, pour aboutir à un objectif principal de Poutine, c'est restauration de l'Union soviétique et de son surtout influence dans le monde.
So what we are facing now, we are pretty often talking about manipulation. It's more like a full strategic in order to recreate the empire, the Russian empire, which is one of the main goals in Putin's head.
Donc Poutine, elle n'a rien caché, il a tout déclaré en 2008 en conférence de Munich.
He didn't hide anything. He was pretty clear with that, even crystal clear during the Munich conference.
Mais il n'y a que les Ukrainiens qui connaissent très bien le mode de fonctionnement des cerveaux de mentalité russe.
But only Ukrainians know that well Russian government mindset.
On a commencé à alerter tout le monde.
They try to warn everyone.
Parce qu'on connaissait très bien comment c'est fini. Parce que vous savez, malheureusement, l'histoire des gens, ils finissent par la Deuxième Guerre mondiale.
Because they want to warn, because they know the end of the history. They remind the World War conflict, World War I and World War II, and they want to warn in order to avoid this kind of endings.
Donc, on a commencé à alerter parce qu'on a senti où ça va venir. Et il faut dire que tout ce que fait la Russie aujourd'hui, c'est idéologie du chaos. Il faut s'aimer le chaos, il faut déstabiliser les situations à l'intérieur du pays de ses adversaires parce que l'Occident collectif est désigné dans la doctrine de politique internationale en tant qu'adversaire de la Russie.
And you have to keep in mind that in doctrine, European countries are quoted like Russia adversaries, and one of the goal and one of the strategy is to sow chaos in other countries in order to be able to push their own geopolitical objective.
Parce que l'outil principal, c'est semer la peur.
Because the main tool is to sow fear.
Et pourquoi les Ukrainiens sont insupportables pour Poutine?
And why Ukrainians are unbearable for Putin?
Parce que c'est le seul peuple qui n'a pas peur de Poutine.
Because they are one of the only one who are not afraid of him.
Parce que, je voudrais vous rappeler, tout l'armement nucléaire, tout ce qui est l'industrie aérospatiale de l'Union soviétique qui faisait l'image de grandeur de l'Union soviétique.
Okay, because I want you to keep in mind that all the weapon arsenal and the nuclear power that make the greatness of Russia, let's
C'était
say Russia,
conçu,
was conceived,
produit
produced,
et géré
and managed
par l'Ukraine.
by Ukraine.
Toutes les meilleures institutions et les meilleures usines étaient construites en Ukraine par les Ukrainiens.
Best firms and producers were built, created and managed by Ukraine.
Mon
And
père
in Ukraine.
travaillait dans l'aéronautique.
As
Il
my
a
dad,
construit les grands Antonov.
as my dad, who was an aviation engineer, and he was building Antonov's planes.
Mon oncle a travaillé dans l'aérospatial et a construit tous les cosmodromes de l'Union soviétique.
My uncle was working in aerospace and he built their greatest cosmodromes.
Et croyez-moi, je sais de quoi je parle.
So I know what I'm talking about.
Ce sera le grand découvert peut-être pour tout le monde quand les Européens vont commencer à travailler plus activement avec l'Ukraine. Mais je vais finir très vite. Alors, ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, ce que nous devons comprendre, voilà, je vous invite à croire aux Ukrainiens
So I invite you to believe in the Ukrainians
et avoir confiance en notre lecture des Russes,
and to trust the reading of Russians people
parce que nous avons une expérience inouïe
because they've got a huge experience
qui date des centaines d'années.
From centuries and centuries.
La démocratie ukrainienne, c'est une démocratie, si on peut dire, démocratie vierge.
Ukrainian democracy, if I can say, is a virgin democracy.
Parce qu'il vient du peuple, c'est pas les systèmes d'État, c'est le peuple, nos Maïdan, c'est les citoyens, la société civile qui l'anime.
Just remember that Maidan was created and animated by civil society and not by organism.
Et nous croyons toujours
And we still believe
à la politique des principes et des valeurs.
in the policy of values and principles.
Tandis que nous avons aperçu pendant cette guerre qu'il y a la politique des intérêts.
And we faced that during that war that we had to deal with policy of interest.
Avec les traces des idées, des narratives néocolonialistes et impérialistes.
With the remains of neocolonialism and neo-imperialism, sorry.
Donc, pour
meaning.
finir, l'Ukraine croit aux valeurs européennes et elle lutte pour les valeurs européennes. Et nous invitons tout le monde de rejoindre à la politique des valeurs et oublier la politique des intérêts.
I will end with that, but Ukraine believe in values and democracy, and we invite everyone together with us for values and democracy. That's why.
Oui.
That's why.
Et la Russie, il est absolument vincible. On peut le vaincre et on peut le battre. C'est pas un monstre, c'est le colosse sur les pieds d'argile.
Thank you so much. So Russia can be vanquished.
Dernière slide.
It's just a giant on a feet of clay.
Voilà, ça, ce sera la couverture de ma livre. Regardez, la petite, c'est pas la grandeur, c'est pas la taille, c'est la grandeur d'esprit qui compte.
This will be the cover of my book. The greatness is not about territory, but about minds.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Christiane. Désolée de...
That was my pleasure for you.
But sorry, you've got like an in-live French to English translation.
So now we move to the round table.
Exactly to
Round table about what the militaries expect from
academics and from
academics and
research.
researchers.
So
We have
I
a number of academics in this room, so we want to know what you are expecting from us. And us also, we want to know how is it possible to do research Well, you know. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So Christine, can we put the slide up real quick? Yeah. So I have all of 2 slides for an introduction. Okay. And they're very simple. One is just our title, and the other are your names. So when Martin, Christine, and I sat down and we talked about having this session at the Paris National Defense and Strategy Forum, one of the questions that we had as we spoke with each other is as academics we're somewhat disconnected from the military. And in fact, it's almost unnatural for us to talk to each other because academics are always like, well, you know, the military, they do their thing. The military goes, what do academics know? And I think that's a fair question because we don't communicate very well. So one of the things that we asked Christine to do was invite 4 representatives from the various services in France to come and tell us what they need us to work on for the next year or 2. And so she was able to arrange, and if the slide will pop up, I'll have proper names because I'm bad with names because I am an academic, is to get someone from the Army, the Air and Space Command, from the Gendarmerie, did I say it properly? Gendarmerie. I got close. You know, Americans aren't great, and Navy to join us to give us a sense of what would be interesting to do, which is particularly interesting for me and Martin because we have several of our PhD students here. So what we'll do today is we'll start on the left-hand side. We'll just do a brief introduction, and if you'll share with us things that you're thinking about that are important. And then what we'll do after that is we'll take questions from the audience and we'll have an interactive section for the next 90 minutes or so about what we can do to actually bring these 2 communities together. Because at least for Martin and I and Chris, we all sit in applied schools. And what we've been asked to do by our universities is to actually answer the questions you want answered. But given we don't talk to you, it's hard for us to know what to answer. So instead, we participate in academic discourses which are disconnected. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Okay, so it's truth in advertising for once. So we can start with you. Could you please introduce yourself? And tell us what you're thinking about. What's important? Professor of Information Technology, microphones are beyond me. I'm a complete failure. No?
No sound, Christine.
Just so everybody knows,
Yes.
Once this session is done, what we plan to do is write up what you share and then share it with our academic community. So hopefully we'll stimulate more work that you need done.
Yes. First, I must apologize. I don't expect to do this exchange in English. I'm not very fluent, but be patient.
But Chris can help us with
Speak slowly, and maybe I will ask to repeat your questions. I'm the Brigadier General Dimitri Luciani. I'm the officier général au numérique de l'armée de l'air et de l'espace. Donc I'm the counselor of the Chief of Staff of the French Air Force. I'm in charge of the digital transformation of the Air Force, and à ce titre. And so I follow, I lead all the projects turning around IA and data valorization. As expected in this exchange is about one of the themes of subject of study of Madame Ducoin-Clément. It's the cognitive senses and how the operations, especially from Russia and China, could affect our soldiers, our airmen, in the future operations that we consider could be happen in months or years to come.
Hi everybody. First of all, I want to apologize for my English. I'm a French people, so I'm speaking not really friendly English, but we'll try to do some exercise with you. I'm the General Marc Boget. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the French Gendarmerie. The French Gendarmerie is one of the two police in France, military police for the Gendarmerie. I am the counselor of the General Director of the Gendarmerie Nationale, the General Hubert Bonneau, and I will lead all the project, numeric and technology project for the Gendarmerie, approximately 300 or something like this. And during this section, I will underline some points which are really important for us in order to prepare the Gendarmerie to the actual threats. And we will examine together what I will expect from the research, from the researchers and from the university in general, in order to help us to fight against criminal aspects I will treat in the future.
Good morning, everyone. I am Brigadier General Maxime Dautran. I belong to the Future Combat Command. It's I don't know if there is. I made some slides because I didn't know how it was organized, and just to focus on what we are working on and what we are expecting from some researchers. So first, I belong to this command. It's a brand new command, so I just wanted to briefly talk about that because it has been created last year. It's a new command in the army focused on prospective and innovation. So its core missions are to innovate and create and exploit, and to have a view on the next 15, 20 years. So next, please. The first mission of this command was to see how the battlefield could be in 2040, and so actually and currently we are focusing on this. Next, please. On these 5 technologies, which we think are for interest for the army. From the top left, it's in French, sorry. Artificial intelligence, autonomous system, and then hyperconnectivity, and then directed energy, sorry, yeah. The augmented soldier, and I will focus on this topic because it's a very new for the army, which is focused on lethality, and this topic is really interesting for us, and then hypersonic and spatial. Next. So the battlefield for the army in 2040, we have seen 6 characteristics. So it will be more transparent, you know, with drones, with satellites, and so on. It will be more contested, saying that for the army we need more lethal weapons like long-range fires and solar defense, surface air defense. It will be more expanded, and the nation's territory could be in war as well. It will be more exposed for the soldier, more dynamic with a new C2 and reconfigured with, as I said, autonomous system. But we think that the soldier and maybe the augmented soldier will remain at the heart of land warfare. And the last slide. So it means for us that we are in the early stages of this type of research. As I said, our industrial and our army is focused on little capabilities, but we want to go further for our soldier. So we need some research or maybe some documents, some capabilities for a new soldier, an augmented soldier, maybe with physical enhancement. There is still already exoskeleton, but maybe we can go further. Maybe some stimulants, bionic prosthetics. Then we could explore cognitive enhancement and operational enhancement. But the more important for us is maybe to focus research on the resilience against cognitive warfare. So that concludes my quick briefing, but just to say to you that we need maybe some research on the topic of the augmented soldier. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Hi, my name is Captain Puya, so I'm the only captain in this panel, so it's quite impressive for me. Thank you very much for inviting us. And right now I'm working as I would call that political and strategical counselor to the chief, the French chief of the naval staff. It's a very small team. We are actually 2 French people on it, with a couple of young students working with us. And our goal is kind of to be a little bit outside of the box and try to talk to the chief and try to bring some information and stuff. I will start with just a presentation with kind of a joke we have in France, with 2 short sentences. The first one is coming from Eric Tabarly, which is a very famous sailor. And he was talking about the sea or the oceans, and he defined like that, saying that the ocean is what the French people have in their back when they are on the beach during summer. Second one, it's around 40 years later. It's President Emmanuel Macron. They come to the French economic assise, and they were saying that the ocean is what the French people have in theirs. They are looking when they are looking for the future. So it's quite an important change of mind, I will say. But I will say on the day-to-day working, it's quite a challenge, because when you are talking about maritime in France, it's basically in the research, in the community, it's quite difficult to have. So my point will be to try to bring you some need coming from the scientific, from the university, from the think tank, to turn around sea, to turn around ocean, to have this in mind that the French future or the French system is actually connected with the maritime, and so we have a lot of maritime challenge coming at us, and we need to think about it. So I will a little bit develop on that, working mainly on human resources. I will work on economics, obviously, and economics, maritime economic connection with the naval power. And the last point will be probably on lawfare, because it's a lawfare system, and I think we are facing not exactly a revolution, but at least we will be challenging on a lot of on a discussion. Thank you very much.
So you hear what they're interested in. What questions do you have?
Happy to start this off. One of the earlier speakers, I don't know if you were there, was talking about how state actors and the combination of state actors and rebel groups creates new synergies and oftentimes benefits in terms of narratives for the rebel groups. The specific example was the Ukrainians basically supporting the fight of the Tuareg in principle, and then the Tuareg getting more attention and rallying behind this narrative. I was wondering, in your specific fields, do you see new actors emerge as threats? And I'm state support. Is that like, what do you see in your specific, or not at all? Maybe do you see any threats emerging from new type of actors that are emerging? And if it's not relevant, obviously I'd also be keen to.
It's the subject of Cyber Command. There no representative of the Cyber Command, but it's a subject of Cyber Command. Donc, the offensive information fight and all the influence is leads by Cyber Command. Donc, we have somewhat. Donc, the attack, the cyber attacks and so on are managed, the crises are shared by Cyber Command and not by us. In the theater, operation theaters, we have a chain of command, cyber, is distinct from the other chains of commands. So there is a fourth, chain of command in this area. The cyber command is not represented here.
Yeah, I've got another question, because you mentioned C2, but I think therefore you refer to C4, that should be communication, adding communication and computer. And for us, because we are representing the field of information system, so that's one of our interests and focus. So is there things that we can look into it regarding communication, and computer, in fact, to that respect, where we will be useful? For example, we had some idea of research of finding out or identifying who will be the best defender type, for example, in cyber. So that's kind of idea we had, to be able to profile and recruit the best defender, not on the ground, not for physical defense, but for cyber defense, because it seems it needs another mentality to fight hackers from Russia or name it, just to keep blaming the Russians.
Perhaps I will use the quality of translation of Christine, and I will answer in French. Je suis l'ancien chef du commandement de la gendarmerie dans le cyberespace, donc c'est un sujet que je connais pour avoir créé cette unité.
I'm the former head of the cyber unit of the National Gendarmerie, so I have some light on that subject.
Alors, pour répondre d'abord à la question de monsieur sur est-ce qu'il y a de nouveaux acteurs et comment s'articulent les hackers au sens large. En fait, le monde du hacker est un monde relativement interpénétré. Les groupes sont interconnectés les uns avec les autres. C'est une industrie qui est particulièrement florissante.
So concerning the first question on cyber criminals world and communities, they are very embedded, they are very fluid, and they can evolve very quickly.
On estime que nos cyberdélinquants dégagent un revenu d'à peu près 2500 milliards par an de dollars.
The estimations are cyber criminals are making incomes that are from...
Non, 2500 milliards.
2,000 milliards per year.
Yeah, billions.
And do you mean state-sponsor actors, hackers, state-sponsor, sponsorisés par des États, ou d'un point de vue business, le criminel de base?
Et vous n'avez pas honte de me parler en anglais alors que vous parlez français parfaitement?
Aren't you ashamed to speak me in English, knowing that you are completely fluent in French?
Non. Donc j'y viens. Donc on a des tels revenus génèrent des véritables industries criminelles face à nous. Maintenant, comment se répartissent ces hackers? On peut les classer en 3 grandes catégories. Ceux du très très haut du spectre, c'est là qu'on va retrouver des groupes sponsorisés par des États qui en fait financièrement ne sont plus à la recherche de revenus, mais vont chercher à déstabiliser l'État adverse.
So we are, because of the amount of money, which is really huge, we are facing a complete organization in front of us, and we can mainly divide them in three big categories. At the top of the spectrum, we can find the big players that may be sponsored by states.
C'est là aussi où on va trouver tous les grands groupes de hack. Vous avez tous entendu parler de Conti, vous avez tous entendu parler de... alors Lazarus en est un, enfin voilà. C'est là où on va trouver les très grands groupes criminels.
Alongside with this backed groups that are backed up by states, we can find also like very big important groups you all know about Conti, Lockbit and else. Spoiler attack, Cozy Bears, they are relinked to one APT, Russian state sponsored.
C'est ça, c'est là où on va trouver tous les APT. En dessous de ces hackers du très très haut du spectre, qui fort heureusement ne sont pas très nombreux parce que ça nécessite un très haut niveau technique, c'est où là il faut qu'on ait en face des experts chez nous capables de les bloquer.
In the second place of this rating, we are fortunately they are not very numerous, but they are very skilled, and that's why we need to be skilled as well in order to fight them.
À l'autre bout du spectre, en bas du spectre, on va trouver par contre tous les cyberdélinquants qui nous font de la délinquance de masse. Un faible montant, mais un grand nombre de victimes. C'est toutes les vagues de phishing, d'escroquerie à la fausse romance, les faux ordres de virement que vous voyez pulluler dans la presse.
And in the third place of the podium, we can find criminals who are not making big amounts, but who are making a lot of attacks. And here we can find all that, the one who are managing phishing waves like romance, escroquery, president fraud, all these kind of things. They are not always very skilled, but they are very massive.
Et alors surtout au milieu, et c'est cette part-là qui augmente, on va trouver des hackers qui sont moins chevronnés que ceux du haut du spectre, mais qui vont utiliser du crime as a service, qui vont en fait aller acheter une vulnérabilité, l'exploitation d'une vulnérabilité à quelqu'un du haut du spectre. Ça lui coûtera 20% du montant de son butin, c'est à peu près bien standardisé. Il va aller chercher de la puissance de calcul à un deuxième, ça lui coûtera entre 3 et 5% de son butin. Il va aller chercher de la puissance de blanchiment pour blanchir les fonds qu'il va essayer de récupérer, 5% de son butin, et puis il va lancer le filet de façon relativement large sur ce qui est capable de lui rapporter de l'argent.
And this is interesting because we've got a full embeddment, because those guys, they can't use crime as a service, buying to the skilled one something. They can make a contract with others for the power of calculation, and then they can make a last cooperation for money laundering. For the first cooperation, it costs them something like around 20% of their income. For the second layer calcul power, it's around 5%, and for laundry issues, it's between 2 and 3% of the total amount of what they will earn with their techniques.
Et donc voilà, et je m'arrêterai là. Et pour répondre donc à votre question, tous ces groupes, notamment à cause de cette capacité qui est maintenant mise en place de vendre du service criminel, tous ces groupes sont interconnectés. C'est éminemment international. Une enquête cyber est éminemment internationale. C'est très vite 7, 8, 10 pays qui sont impliqués. Si vous avez entendu parler d'EncroChat, c'était 42 pays que l'on dirigeait depuis la France. Et c'est quelque chose qui est standard. Et on en aura l'occasion d'y revenir. Ça implique énormément de coopération.
So to answer your question, there is a lot of cooperation, embeddment, and linked in between those groups. This is something which is highly international. We are quickly facing organization with 2, 4, 5, 7 groups. If you heard about Anchorage, it was something involving 42 different countries and leading by France in terms of commandment. So we had to create like high collaboration in order to fight this new type of collaboration in crimes.
So one thing that we'd like to hear from you as we unpack these things here and then move you to this side, like how, if one of us in the academic side wants to come to someone in the military and pitch a project or find out what kind of questions are helpful for us to ask, the way we ask them, what kind of resources are okay for us to say, we could do this if you can help us with this, and then what kind of outputs would you need? Because academics write these papers that sometimes are not very interesting to practice.
Some are.
But some are. but often it's not the content, it's the way we tell the story. And so we need an understanding of how to write a report which you'll actually use. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will try to be very fast, but the first thing I would like to introduce a little bit the particularity of the sea space. I'm sorry for all the people who know that already, but I think it's quite important because the maritime element will be very structural for us, and it will bring, even in a military perspective, a lot of non-military activity perspective research. We need to actually to be able to handle our job, which is the protection of the country, obviously, and the people at sea, but also what we call the strategical link, connected in the global world. And particularly today, we know that a lot of these strategical links to the country are coming from the sea, either on power, but also on data and everything. So if you don't mind, I would just present very quickly what the speciality and the specificity of this space. The maritime space actually is for everyone the same. There are one particularity, it's a unified open area. Everybody is connected. As you know, maybe there is only a couple of countries, less than 10 countries with no access to the ocean, which means what? In a particular moment right now, I'm connected with Russia, with sea, it's my border country. I'm on the mainland, I will have to cross 4, 5, 6 borders. But on the sea, I'm connected directly to China. I'm connected directly to South America in any way, because it's a unified maritime space, I would say. The second one is, it's what we call an abrasive environment, which means what? Technology is paramount in the maritime world, like space, like all those very competitive moments, technological. So technological, economical will be very important for me. It's an open space, which means there is 3 or 2 major use at sea we can do. It's very simple, actually. We can play 2 things at sea. You can either transport or exploit. That's the reason why maritime is so important in globalization, because we have a single principle on that, which is freedom of navigation. It's a free, open area, like cyber, like obviously space, but it's one of the more, I would call, physical space, actually, with a free space. Why I'm talking about that, just to frame this particular environment, because it will bring me on the question we need and the discussion and the question we need. The first one will be on the human resources. Obviously, you know that at sea, it's not a permanent area, so we need to be at sea. So we need specific or particular formation, training, capabilities on the industry and whatever. So we need a very important industrial roots in the country, in Europe, and to be able to dominate, or to exploit the sea. So it's very important. The second one is the transportation. Transportation is for everyone. So basically, we are connected with the world. So in one way, and not simplify, too much, but anyway, if something bad happening very strong with China, the connection to the French citizen will be very more important than something can happen on the ground, because the consequences will be directly connected. But how can I protect all the trade, important for me, all over the world? Because it's almost impossible, because you have ship everywhere, you have such an important space. So we need to think about what will be the next organization of the maritime environment in the world, so we can identify what will be the weakness, safety or security weakness, so I can imagine in the future what could be my response as a military, as a maritime, so what development I need to have, what will be my choke point, what will be my access point, what will be my operation. So I need a connection between the maritime world and the naval world, so because I will be reacting to the maritime development in order to bring what I need to do, which is provide, to be a security or a safety provider in the world. So it's very connected. One other consequences will be, as you know, it's international. I cannot play by myself. So you can think country speaking when you're on the ground. It's very difficult to think country speaking when you're at sea. Maybe you know this is the lawfare system. It's a free open area. Okay, it's quite simple to say that. But in fact, it's very more complicated, and it's complicated on a willing. It's complicated to be to provide opportunity of useful. For example, there is no law at sea. There is only the law of what we call the flag law, the law of the flag of the ship. But what can I protect, for example, today on a very important ship? The ship could be, let's say that, a ship from Panama. The owner could be coming from the United States. The crew will be from the Filipinos. The cargo will be Chinese and, let's say, French. And maybe strategical for French. If I'm in Bab el-Mandeb, what is the ship I will be protected? Is it my cargo? Is it my crew? Is it my flag? Is it the ship? What is the connection with that? So the lawfare system, maybe you know about Ghost Fleet, you know about Dark Fleet, you know it's quite on the day-to-day actualities. What is the difficulty is how you can play against Russia, because Russia is counter-turning all the defense system, all the interdiction on the oil, for example. But it's very difficult because if the ship is from one country, on what order, on what law basis I can play on it. So it's an international, so I will have to convince everyone to be okay to play on something. So I need to have study on lawfare system at the maritime world. It's a very huge area, and I'm not talking about only my space because I'm a Navy guy. In fact, it will be what's going to happen in space. It will be exactly the same. We are going on the same. Space is supposed to be free. Tomorrow, I'm saying that we will be facing more and more lawfare in the space system because it's exactly what happened in the sea system. So I think there is quite a major connection. The last point, obviously there is a lot of technological study we can work on it. So I would like to very emphasize, we need to think about human resources. So we need sociologists, we need demographic people, because on the Western country, we are dropping down on the manpower resources, I will say. But it's even more complicated when you want to go at sea, because you need to be technical, you want to be, to know some scientific formation and stuff. So human resources will be very important for us. This is very important to have connection between what we call maritime economy system and naval economy system. We need to reconnect that, and we need to have a forecast study. If you take the Anglo-Saxon world, you have a lot of study on it. In the French world, it's very difficult to find it. What could be the next maritime organization in 10 years? It's a very major question mark for us, and we need that as a defense officer. And the last point, obviously, is the lawfare, as I was saying, it's very important for us. We work on that. The juridical part of the international law and development is very important. So this is my 3 major points of reflection from the academic I'm expecting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my introduction, what is important for the army is enhancing soldier resilience against cognitive war. So our objective is to prepare our soldiers to identify and neutralize cognitive manipulation while strengthening their ability to handle stress and uncertainty. So our main objectives are to train soldiers to manage and filter information, to reduce cognitive overload and mitigate manipulation. The second one is maybe developing AI-driven defenses against digital information or disinformation. And the third one is enhancing mental resilience. So at the end of the day, the 4 domains I mentioned in my last slide, physical, cognitive, operational, and cognitive warfare resilience, represent key areas for the future development within land forces. So any advancement in these fields will be highly valuable. Thank you.
Le ministre des Armées l'a annoncé dans son discours d'ouverture, il faut protéger loin, mais il y a une évidente connexion avec le théâtre national. C'est le rôle qui est confié à la gendarmerie. Et à la question, qu'est-ce qu'on peut attendre du monde universitaire en gendarmerie? On en attend beaucoup. On en attend...
Yes, sorry to enter, but I'm far from a professional, so... the Ministry of Defense said that we had to defend ourselves from menaces that are far away, but it's highly connected with national issues, and this is exactly the role of the French National Gendarmerie. What are we expecting from researchers? We are expecting a lot.
On en attend tout d'abord effectivement des profils pour travailler avec nous, des scientifiques pour travailler avec nous. On a toute une série de partenariats avec un certain nombre d'universités parce que nous sommes systématiquement sur le haut de la vague en termes techniques.
We are expecting a lot. We are already contracting partnership with some university. We're expecting them to work with us because we are always in the first place when something is happening.
Mais on a aussi besoin du monde universitaire pour éclairer l'avenir sur toute une série de sujets techniques émergents. Pardonnez-moi Christine, je vais faire un peu de technique. Quand on parle de quantique, quand on parle avec toutes les problématiques de cryptographie qui vont derrière, quand on parle d'IA, avec toutes les problématiques d'algorithmes derrière.
But we are also expecting us to help us to enlighten what could be the future, the next future, and especially in high-tech subjects. When I am talking about high-tech, I'm thinking about quantic, I'm thinking about AI, of course, and all the algorithm thing of cryptocurrencies and all the technologies that are supporting them.
Et j'ai coutume de dire que ce sujet, en fait, c'est les deux faces d'une même pièce. Notre métier premier, c'est la chasse aux voleurs pour essayer de les mettre hors d'état de nuire. Mais plus on est bon pour aller interpeller les cyberdélinquants, plus on devient une cible intéressante pour le tableau de chasse des hackers. Et donc il faut qu'on se protège au même niveau que l'on attaque nos cyberdélinquants.
I used to say that we are facing the two sides of the same coin, because the best we become in fighting crimes, the more we are interesting to become targeted by these same criminals, because of course they want to counteract what we are doing, and they want to show that they are in capacity to defeat us.
Et typiquement, dans le cyber, on l'a dit, c'est éminemment international, c'est éminemment un domaine de collaboration avec l'ensemble des acteurs, que ce soit des acteurs policiers au plan international, mais également des acteurs universitaires. Je vais vous donner un cas très concret sur lequel je travaille actuellement avec une des universités. C'est par exemple tout ce qui tourne autour des systèmes multimédia embarqués dans les véhicules, qui sont maintenant des ordinateurs sur roues. Eh bien, il y a des travaux de recherche. On a un certain nombre de chercheurs qui travaillent au sein de la gendarmerie, justement pour éclairer tous ces sujets, de façon à ce qu'on puisse anticiper les menaces de demain.
We are also asking from university and from academics to collaborate with us in order to help us to find lots of ways to behave and to be better and better in our work. As an example, I will quote a work that we are leading with a university, and they are focusing on embedded systems, because at NO our units are some kind of computer on wheels. So they are working on that with us in order to improve our system to make them better for our tasks.
Ce qu'on attend également du monde universitaire, c'est par exemple tout ce qui est transformation de voix, de vidéos à la volée, d'animation d'avatars en temps réel. C'est déjà des sujets sur lesquels on travaille avec des laboratoires de recherche. Et l'idée, c'est à chaque fois de détecter le prochain virage technologique de façon à ce que, lorsque ce virage arrive, on soit parfaitement prêt et en mesure d'y faire face.
We are also asking them to work on voice transformation and video transformation in real time, because it's already something that we are fighting. And mainly from academics, from here and there, what we are expecting is to highlight the future to help us to make an efficient and operational anticipation in order to be ready when the threats are coming out.
Ce qu'il faut bien comprendre, et si vous vous souvenez des revenus qu'ils génèrent chaque année, nos cyberdélinquants ont exactement les mêmes outils que nous. Ils ont les moyens de s'acheter, non meilleur, j'espère pas quand même. On arrive à de bons résultats, je trouve. Par contre, c'est clair que c'est en permanence une course, et c'est en permanence, on ne peut se permettre que d'être sur le haut de la vague, sinon on est sorti du jeu.
Let's be clear, that's a race and we have to be the best of the best in that race. Because concerning, just remember the amount that I mentioned that the cybercriminal can get from their crimes. It means that they have exactly as the same capacities that we have. I hope not better. I think not better. I think we are good and we are not doing better. It's just a special code because this was a subject. So we have to be very good. We have to be and to stay in the first place in order to fight and not only react against those cyber criminals.
Et pour finir mes propos, je voudrais insister sur le maître mot dans le monde cyber, qui est le mot collaboration en français, partnership en anglais. C'est uniquement comme ça que les forces de sécurité de par le monde arrivent à des résultats en travaillant ensemble. Pour cela, le principe est simple. Vous êtes bon, vous rentrez dans le cercle des forces qui comptent et vous travaillez. Vous êtes moins bon, vous restez à la porte. C'est la dure loi du sport.
And to conclude my speech, I would highlight the key word in cyber, which is partnership or collaboration in French, because we need those partnership, and the rules is definitely very simple. If you are a good one and if you are very good, you can come into the very little circles of the policy and security organism who are counting. If you are not that good, you stay at the door. So we need to be there, you need to go there, and we need this kind of partnerships. I did my best.
Since I can do it in French,
yeah, you can.
Let's talk French. Trois sujets.
3 subjects.
Le premier, celui que j'ai exposé maladroitement en début de séance, c'est un champ d'études qui n'est pas aujourd'hui traité, qui a été lancé il y a quelques années mais qui n'est pas traité. C'est les opérations de désinformation, comme on voit ce qui se fait en Ukraine, et je reprends les études de Madame Dugouin-Clément. Il y a 10 ans, on regardait ou il y a 20 ans en Afghanistan, on regardait ce que nos militaires, nos soldats, nos aviateurs...
Just a quick stop that I translate. Okay, first subject that I exposed in the first place. We had to deal with informational warfare and influence operation, as we could have observed it in Ukraine and else, and he kindly mentioned some works. And this is something that we had to work on really hard.
Donc il y a 10-20 ans, on regardait ce que nos soldats, nos aviateurs, nos marins racontaient sur les réseaux sociaux.
10 years ago, we were watching what our militaries or pilots were saying and watching on the social networks.
Aujourd'hui, on regarde ce qu'ils consomment comme information sur les réseaux sociaux.
No, we are interested in what they are consuming in terms of information.
Et nous pensons que le sujet d'étude aujourd'hui serait de voir le niveau de pénétration d'opérations de désinformation menées par des puissances étrangères.
And we thought that it is interesting and needed to analyze and observe the penetration level of this kind of informational operation into the military forces.
Alors pourquoi? Parce que nos grands chefs disent tous que un des sujets importants au succès des armées, ce sont les forces morales. C'est ça le sujet, les forces morales. Et ce que consomment nos jeunes sur les réseaux sociaux et la manière dont ça peut les affecter joue directement sur les forces morales.
This is important because our top chief and commander say that we have to rely on the moral strength, and the thing is that what they are consuming, what they are watching, what they are listening can affect this moral strength.
Et c'est le champ d'étude de Madame Dugouin-Clément. Deuxième sujet, la supériorité aérospatiale est une affaire de vitesse.
Aerospace superiority is a question of speed.
Et aujourd'hui, le champ enfin, de bataille aérospatiale pose un problème de saturation d'informations. Il y a trop d'informations pour que les centres de planification de conduite puissent absorber, traiter l'information et la prioriser.
And at NO, we've got an issue with saturation when we are dealing with all the conflictuality, area. And at NO, the commandment unites the center of operation could be quickly saturated by all the information they are receiving and treating.
Ça peut être des essaims de drones, comme on imagine que les Chinois sont en train de les préparer. Ça peut être les réseaux de satellites défilants qui sont de plus en plus nombreux. Donc la question est, dans cette masse d'infos qui va arriver sur les capteurs que nous avons, comment je priorise et comment je décide quoi détruire en premier, quoi traiter en premier.
This saturation can take the form of drone swarms, as we are thinking Chinese are developing them. That could also take the form of satellite constellation that are more and more numerous. And one of the questions is, how do I prioritize the information that I get? How do I choose what I have to treat, destroy, or any else? So this is a question of saturation and prioritization of the task and of the effects expected.
Alors, on a beaucoup d'études, on a beaucoup de projets, de partenariats avec des industriels qui proposent des solutions, justement, pour trier, traiter l'information. Nous pensons qu'il y a une part de ces études, enfin, il manque quelque chose, et on revient sur le premier sujet, c'est le cognitif. C'est grosso modo comment un opérationnel va, apprécier, garder une sorte d'indépendance d'esprit par rapport à l'outil qui va lui trier les infos et va lui présenter des solutions.
We've got a lot of proposals and products that are made by industrials in order to help to select all the information. But I think, and we think, that there is a brick that is still missing, and it's on the cognitive aspect and the cognitive sides of the operators. And one issue for us is how these operators can keep their own autonomy towards the technology in order to see if what is proposed by the system helping to the decisions is correct or not.
Voilà, on ne voit pas aujourd'hui dans les projets qui nous ont fait cet aspect cognitif qui est pris en compte. Je traite de l'info, je la priorise, mais je pense que côté cognitif, il manque une part de l'étude qui doit être apportée.
So at NO, in what I see, there is a lot of thing in selecting the information and push it to the operators, but there is all the cognitive side, which is not taken into account, which is missing, and that is something that we need to dig in.
Et troisièmement, l'entraînement. Et sur l'entraînement, il y a un champ en fait, d'études sur lesquelles on attend les universitaires, les chercheurs. C'est tout ce qui nous permet de... l'arme aérienne coûte cher. Faire voler un avion coûte cher, et donc tout ce qui peut permettre de, non pas se substituer, mais de compléter l'information traditionnelle de manière virtuelle, de manière peu onéreuse et recherchée.
Thirdly, I will talk about training, and this is a field that we have lots of expectation concerning the academics. As you know, jet fighters are costly. We have I am in an army where everything is technological and costly, so everything that could help us to save some money in terms of training, maybe using virtuality of this kind of thing, is warmly welcome.
Un exemple. Nous considérons que les pilotes de chasse français, que ce soit de l'armée de l'air ou de la marine, sont meilleurs que les pilotes chinois aujourd'hui. Mais on pense qu'avec l'intelligence artificielle qui va pouvoir être embarquée sur les avions chinois, les Chinois pourraient compenser le décalage qu'il y a entre l'excellence française et le niveau qu'ils sont aujourd'hui assez rapidement.
As an example, we think that at NO, our pilots are better than Chinese pilots, our pilots from air and even for marine. But the thing is that we fear and we think that maybe using AI, Chinese pilot could fill the gap in between French pilot and Chinese pilots, because they could rely on onboard AI systems that could help them to be like equal to French pilots at least.
Et pour garder l'avance, nous sommes donc en attente de toutes les solutions, technologies de jumeaux numériques, de modélisation en fait de l'entraînement 3D et de toute l'aide qui va permettre à un pilote avec un adversaire, une intelligence artificielle, petit à petit d'améliorer en fait les modes d'action, les tactiques et l'emploi de son armement dans des environnements les plus réalistes et les plus complexes possibles et qu'on puisse, et je termine après.
That's why we're expecting a lot from technology, like numerical twin, like AI, virtualization of training, to help the pilots to improve their skills in exercise, TTX, or simulation, where they could be facing very realistic situation and opponent in order to be and to stay the best of the best.
Et si on prend l'exemple du conflit ukrainien et le rythme auquel en fait et les Russes et les Ukrainiens ont changé leur mode d'action, ces systèmes de jumeaux numériques ou de modélisation au champ de bataille doivent permettre d'injecter en fait rapidement de nouvelles menaces, de nouveaux scénarios.
If we are talking about Ukraine as an example, all this technology that I quote previously and others have to help us in order to be sort like inputs in order to improve our capacity on the fields.
Donc en résumé, on attend en fait la recherche sur deux thèmes principaux, le cognitif.
We are expecting two main themes of research, if I have to summarize, for cognitive area and cognitive fields.
Et l'autre, à partir des données que nous possédons, d'être capable de créer des jumeaux numériques de plus en plus réalistes et qui soient capables d'évoluer en fait, au rythme. Je me trompe.
And secondly, relying on our data to be in capacity to create numeric twins that are more and more realistic, that are in capacity to evolve in accordance with the evolution of the threats and of the reality of the theater.
What I would call collective cognition from an organizational point of view. My question is related to, for example, the reform, the pending reform of the numeric ecosystem in the ministry, which is
a new one after a precedent one and a precedent one. We seem to struggle with our organization from a technological point of view, and I think we all know that the capacity of an organization to capture and then to implement technological ruptures are really an advantage towards competitors. So my question is, do you have any interest in management, as we didn't really mention it, in managing the organization facing these new technologies you mentioned?
Je veux bien prendre au début, si vous voulez, d'accord.
Thank you.
Merci. Question intéressante. Alors, on n'est plus sur la recherche. Ok. Bon. Why did the French Defense Minister...
I am a doctorate in this field, so this is a field of research.
Non, mais le management, c'est de la recherche.
Voilà.
Non, non, pas du tout. Ça me pose aucun sujet. Oui, je confirme, c'est effectivement un des domaines de recherche et c'est un domaine de recherche fondamental. Pourquoi ? Parce que... je vous confirme. Pourquoi ? Parce que sans les hommes, nous ne sommes rien. Et la vraie difficulté derrière tous les sujets que l'on adresse, ce n'est pas les problématiques techniques. Les problématiques techniques, il y a plein de cerveaux. Parmi les chercheurs, parmi les ingénieurs, il y a plein de cerveaux pour trouver des solutions. La vraie difficulté, et c'est ce qui sous-tend toute notre action, en tout cas toute l'action de la gendarmerie, c'est la problématique RH. Si on ne fait pas évoluer nos organisations, je finis Christine, promis, soupe sur les pattes arrière.
Bonjour.
Si l'on ne fait pas évoluer nos organisations, si l'on ne sait pas aller chercher les talents et à les fidéliser, eh bien, nous serons perdants.
So I confirm, yes, management is a field of research. And yes, it's a field of interest. And it's even the core of the system, because without the men and the women, we are nothing. Because there is a lot of engineers, a lot of big brands who are dealing with very technological issues. But if ever we are not in capacity to manage people who are in charge to manage this main system that we are talking about, we are nothing, and we definitely need to be very careful in order to be in capacity to manage all the human factors.
C'est pour ça que dans toutes nos organisations, on a toutes une direction de la transformation, un service de la transformation, peu importe le nom qu'on lui donne, mais parce que c'est un vrai sujet, une vraie gageure pour des organisations aussi grandes que la nôtre. Et je vais vous donner un cas qui va illustrer mon propos et qui va être justement la démonstration que la techno n'est rien si l'organisation ne bouge pas.
This is because it is a core of the system that we have always Department of Transformations or Head of Transformations. And I will give you an example of how it could take course.
Le cas est très simple. Vous avez tous entendu parler du passage au cloud. C'est une politique gouvernementale pour ce qui concerne la France, avec son pendant qui est le DevOps, le développement agile. Ça pullule dans la presse. Lorsque vous mettez du DevOps dans une organisation, vous bouleversez à peu près tous les fondements de cette dernière. Pourquoi ? Parce que nous passons d'un cycle en V, pour ceux qui ont fait des projets informatiques, à du développement continu, et donc tous les rôles dans l'organisation changent.
You all heard about the cloud that is expected to irrigate all the administrations, and it goes by pair with DevOps. And this is full transformation, because for those who were used to dealing IT projects, we are passing from this system of project management to a full iterative and continuous system and way to develop and manage things.
Et juste pour conclure, si vous ne faites pas cette transformation, eh bien jamais vous ne passez sur une logique cloud, et donc jamais vous prenez le virage que à peu près tout le monde a pris maintenant.
But if we are not jumping from this V-type system to an iterative project management project in continuum, you are just never in capacity to be a cloud administration.
Alors, ça, je suis d'accord.
I agree.
Mais ça ne répond pas forcément à la question de la réorganisation du numérique au sein du ministère de la Défense.
But it is not, maybe it's not completely answering to the question of the reorganization of the management system into the MOD.
Donc le ministre de la Défense a décidé qu'au 1er septembre 2025 serait créé un commissariat au numérique de la Défense.
So the Ministry of Defense decided that commissary to... Commissaire du numérique, commissaire du numérique. Commissioners, yeah. Numeric commissioners, digital commissioner. I don't always, sorry for that, I have the switch in the organization names. In the 1st January of 2025.
Et ce qui change en termes d'organisation, c'est que ce commissaire rend compte directement au ministre. Et ça, c'est nouveau.
The changing thing is that person in charge will directly meet to the minister, and that is something new.
Et c'est nouveau, et ça prouve en fait la prise en compte au niveau du ministère des Armées de la prééminence du numérique sur tous les sujets d'aujourd'hui, que ce soit les opérations, l'ARH, le fonctionnement de l'organisation, sur tous les sujets.
It's new, and that proves that at now, digitals and numerics is irrigating all the area of and the spectrum of action of the MOD.
Et un des premiers objectifs de cette organisation, ça va être de décupler en fait l'efficacité des armées grâce au numérique.
And one of the main goals is to enhance, to augment and realize a demultiplication of the efficiency of the MOD.
Donc on ne fabrique plus un avion ou un bâtiment de combat et ensuite on met du numérique dedans. Le numérique est, en anglais, consubstantiel. Le numérique est dès le départ intégré complètement dans le système d'armes, pour faire simple.
We are no more building jet fighter or ships that we are plugging cyber or numerical things in it. We are building systems where numerics is native. So we are thinking all together in a native way for the digital and numerical things in all our defense systems.
Donc en fait, toutes les entités, organismes, qui travaillaient autour de ces sujets sont regroupés au sein d'une organisation avec un chef, le commissaire, qui dépend directement du ministre. Et c'est un changement, on va dire, presque disruptif, important. Là où avant, il y a une sorte d'éparpillement, c'est plus facile en français, hein, d'éparpillement en fait des ressources, des projets, des finances aussi, hein, des finances.
So we are witnessing a gathering of all the organisms and structures who were working in that field into the core of these commissioners, into the control of this commissioner in order to gather them and to improve the efficiency. So the main idea toward it is to gather everything we wasn't before.
Et maintenant que j'ai été discipliné intellectuellement expliquant le commissariat numérique des armées, Les trois armées, en tout cas mes homologues, qui sont dans la marine ou l'armée terre, sommes soucieux en fait de participer en fait à la décision, aux arbitrages sur les grandes orientations techniques et les grands projets d'armement qui arriveront demain. Donc je ne dis pas qu'on craint de ne plus avoir notre mot à dire, mais en fait dans l'organisation, on va essayer d'être intégré, puisque vous avez compris que l'intégration s'externalise un peu. Et l'idée, c'est de rester au moins dans les instances les plus importantes. Je ne vais pas donner nom ici. Voilà, c'est en gros, on en est aujourd'hui.
So here is my colleague and the other component of the EMOD. The goal for us is to be part of the decision, because as you see, there is a kind of externalization of this issue, because all that is dealing with numeric is gathered in this commissariat. And at NO, that what we add is to add a voice in order to explain our needs, our will, and also our constraints.
I think
CQFD.
I think you are right, but I think our organization is quite flexible and is organizing facing this challenge. I will take just the example for the Army. We have created a new cyber office, a new information system office. We tried to evolve to make the recruitment different. For example, for the initial training to the entry of Saint-Cyr, we recruit now differently from the Air Force and the Navy. We had another branch. You can go to Saint-Cyr without science by literature, but now it's a bit different. We are upgrading the entry of Saint-Cyr by more scientists. So I think it's evolving. Moreover, we have created in our regiment an innovation cell to have an innovation from the bottom up. So I think the organization is quite flexible and we can evolve quite rapidly.
I do believe it's a field of research. If you don't mind, I would like to, not over much, but maybe I had a reflection on that and why I think it's quite important and why it's directly impacting us. The first one is, as you know, I will make a comparison because you're working for the procurement. We are facing, not today, but I think we are facing kind of a revolution, because the procurement cycle used to be bigger than the technological cycle. That means that we have time to think about what will be our next ship, next generation of ship, next generation of aircraft, next generation tank. We have time to develop it, to think about the concept, and after step-by-step technological will come on it. And we used to be in advance with the system. Today, I think we are facing a revolution. I'm talking about the term of revolution. It's reversible. Now it's the cycle, the technological cycle is quite, it's a lot smaller than the procurement definition. So we need to go on step by step. And going on that, we are going and facing a trouble of men and organizations towards technology. We used to have an organization, procurement organization, military organization, C2 organization, whatever. And we used to use technology to improve, to develop, to have new capacity. Today, we are facing a time where technological is actually pushing our transformation of organization, which is a reverse thinking. So I think it's quite important. And the direct consequences on us will be what? The first thing in the men and women we are working with. I used to work in the human resources management. When you are talking about a ship commandant, a submarine commandant, we are talking about 20 years. So if you don't think about organization, what could be the next people you will need on the ship? For example, on the ship we used to have mechanical, electrician, and whatever. Today it will be data scientist. So all this organization will have an impact of how we recruit, how we train, how the military and the armed forces were doing. Is that a scientist? Is that an officer? Is that a technological guys and stuff? So we need this reflection on organization. The second one, for the organization, it's very important that they understand the system we'll be working on. For example, for the Navy particularly, we are working ashore and we are working at sea. But when we are working at sea, definitely the system is not exactly the same background that we used to have on the shore. So we have to have a double-minded system. For example, computer system is not the same. We are depending on satellite when we're, today on satellite when we're at sea. So the debit, the rate, the bit rates coming at sea is not the same that we used to have. So if we are thinking about AI and stuff with a lot of consumption of bytes and megabytes and stuff like that, when we're at sea, it would be different. So we need to understand the space, the maritime environment and the consequences. And if you are working on a submarine, you have no connection at all with external world. So it's very important to understand what could be the consequences from the technological part to the organization part to the system at the end we'll be working on. So I think that's the two major points we need to work on. At least for the Navy perspective or technological army perspective, I would say. Thank you.
So we have 10 minutes left. We've heard lots of really interesting things in the past hour and a half or so. Some unexpected, some such as augmented soldiers are interesting but not known yet. We're trying to figure this out. Given that we've seen this change of long procurement cycles and now and the technology cycle getting shorter, how can we partner with you quickly to match the technology cycle, given the procurement cycles are so slow in terms of doing the research you need? Because usually, in my experience in contracting with military and with the state, you're so slow. So how can we cut through the red tape to get the project done in a timely manner, such that you get the answers you need, and we get the data we need to answer those questions before the technology changes again? Do you have any thoughts on that? That could help us?
Yes, we are slow. It's not mainly because of us.
No, we'll just blame this.
I don't know. I don't give names. Organizations. No, there is two rhythm of armed systems. An aircraft, the cycle of life of the aircraft is about 40, 50 years. Battleship, so maybe land carrier shorter, but there is a time. And the new digital technologies are running fast and faster. The cycle is about 3 months today. When the preeminency is given to the system, you are all is verrouillé, locked. And when you came with a software, an AI on this, they say it's not possible. Or you have to wait for 18 months, a minimum. So we are demanding, we are about des systèmes ouverts, open systems. We want to put somewhere a software as we want, ou as we wish. Je vais le faire en français en fait. En fait, aujourd'hui, plutôt que des systèmes, on va dire, verrouillés sur lesquels il est difficile d'implémenter de nouvelles solutions techniques, nous voulons des systèmes ouverts, et on est tous d'accord, je ne parle pas au nom des deux autres armées, mais on est tous d'accord là-dessus, on veut des systèmes ouverts, on veut du software as a service sur des plateformes as a service, and then the infrastructure, donc the IaaS, follow.
At No, we are no more and we are not expecting For system, proprietary system, we are locked, but we are more on open system, that it could be possible to come in order to plug what we need in order to improve and to answer to our needs, and even to work with philosophy of software as a service in order to enter more quickly, and you are right to be in line with the rhythm of technology. We are all agree on that. I cannot talk for the other armies, but for us, we are all wishing for this kind of open system that we can create plugins and a system of software as a service.
L'idée a l'air simple, mais c'est compliqué parce que l'industriel veut garantir la sécurité d'ensemble du système. Et donc, il y a à inventer un nouveau partenariat avec les industriels, la DGA qui suit les programmes et les armées, pour que le système, une partie du système, notamment la partie avion, si on va partir, système de vol et sécurité de l'avion, soit découplé du système d'armes, que lui, on peut faire évoluer à un rythme différent.
The idea is simple, but in reality it's much more complicated because the industrials want to assure the complete security of all the project. And at No, we had as an example to work for the division in between like weapon system that could evolve its own rhythm to IS systems that needs another way and another rhythm of evolution.